Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library, and I'm here with Alysha Rameera, who we will be talking about her book, My Soul for a Crown. It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's also her debut book, so it's astonishing that this is her debut book. We will be getting all into it in just a minute as we but I have to do my intro first, as you all know. So I want to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs. We couldn't do it without them. I'd also like to thank Alysha for letting us share this program with other libraries because, of course, when libraries work together, we make magic. And you can buy signed books by Alysha from Aesop's Fable, our very favorite local indie bookstore. And for anybody who knows me, you know that I think signed books are gold. And so you should definitely think about that, or you can always get them from your local library. I know we have a copy. I'm sure there's other libraries in the system that do as well. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you would like to just chat with each other about books you're reading or thoughts you have about what we're talking about, feel free to do that in the chat. And I will moderate all of that to Alysha so that we have a very robust conversation for the next hour. So Alysha, I'm not going to introduce you. I want to hear all about you from you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and this book, just a little overview of the book, and then we'll get deeper into it.
Okay. Yeah. So, hi, everyone. I'm Alysha Rameera. I'm coming to you guys tonight from Oklahoma City, where I'm located. I am a Sri Lankan German American author. And so, my debut book, as we were talking, is Her Soul for a Crown. It is a slow burn romantasy in which we follow a young woman with a penchant for poisons who wants to end the reign of evil Rajas in her kingdom, and she's willing to do anything to accomplish that, including selling her soul to the Blood Yakka Reeri.
Wow. When I saw this on NetGalley, I was so intrigued because I've never ever seen anything like this. Not only something from Sri Lanka but that is a romantasy. So uh what okay, let's go back to the very beginning. Have you always been a reader?
Yes. I've always been a reader as far back as I can remember. My family and I kind of moved a lot when I was younger, and like my very first memories of the different cities we've lived in was my grandmother taking me to the library to get a library card, and I would take a stack of books home.
Oh, you could have been me like 20 years later because I did the same. So you've always been a reader. When did you become a romance reader?
Yeah, so I became a romance reader back in the early days of young adult when it was called teen. Now,
Hmm.
you know, it was the teen section. I found Sarah Dessen. And I think I was 13 or 14. It was like the perfect age for Sarah Dessen. And her books were like, you know, for teens, for the young adults. So it was very much about first love, crushes turning to firsts, and like maybe first kisses. And then from there, I just voraciously read everything in the teen section, which wasn't that big back when I was 13. So it was easy to do.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Like now, ours is pretty big now, but it has taken time to build up that collection. But Sarah Dessen, um, who is an amazing writer, could you see any elements of yourself in her books or the books that you were reading?
You know, I wanted to. So definitely self-inserted. I think what was really helpful growing up was that I am part Sri Lankan and part German, and my German coloring comes through very, very strongly. So I felt very white passing for most of my life. Um, until, you know, I was around everyone who was like blonde haired and blue eyed. And then I was like, oh, I look different. But yeah, no, I didn't I probably didn't even really notice it as a teenager that I wasn't finding myself in the books in certain ways, because no one was really talking about that. Um, I mean, I noticed things at my school. I went to private schools, so there weren't anyone else in in my school that was eating, rice and curry for dinner and like or even German food. So,
Mm.
yeah, it was something that came up more in when I went to college. And then obviously there were many more types of cultures around me. And I was like, oh, this was missing.
I think that's a very typical sort of thing. Like we all try to, or maybe, and you maybe you can speak to this more, is we try to fit in, we try to assimilate, and then we do realize that there's something missing because our families are speaking another language or eating
Yeah.
different foods or going back to visit, relatives or things like that. So was that happening in your family as well?
Oh, yes. We went back before my grandparents moved here. They were still in Hong Kong for some of my childhood. So I went back almost every summer. Or back. I went there almost every summer. And I do know, like remember my friends here, especially when we lived in the Midwest. People were like, "You're going where? Where is that? What
Mm-hmm.
is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it was weird to me as a kid having to explain where things were, or like even Sri Lanka, an island off the coast of India. I started like that was my pitch. Every time I said it, I didn't even wait for someone to question. I just said, it's an island off the coast of India.
It's a beautiful island off the coast of India, I have to say. I have not been there, but I have heard so many people talk about it. I myself am Indian, so I feel like I can speak to it a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Like people don't really know about what's over there, but they also don't know about the culture in terms of like what it can, like this book is very much based on, Sri Lankan lore,
Yeah.
basically, right? So like you're bringing something to the table that I really, like I said, have never seen before.
Oh, well, I'm so glad.
I'm saying that, but I'm going to go back to like the history now. So when you were in college, did you think you were going to be a writer?
So I think I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be because my passwords for everything was novelist
Oh,
and then a bunch of numbers afterwards. But I went into like finance because my family was like, you should be either a doctor, a lawyer, or I guess you could be a financial analyst. I was like, well, I really suck at science. Like I tried. I tried freshman year of college, both biology and chemistry. And it just went over my head. And I was like, this isn't gonna happen. But I tried my hardest but I've always known, I guess, looking back, I can see the signs of like, yeah, my passwords were novelist. I bought the first version of Scrivener, the writing tool back in 2028 or 2008, I think. So I just had this a concept in my head that like authors were people who had already had careers and like retired from that and then could write books or something. And it wasn't until I found John Green on YouTube, I think first, and then found out that he wrote all these like amazing books. And he was like in his late 20s or early 30s. And I was like, wait a second, this could be like my first career.
ding, you got the like light bulb. I mean, like there's Christopher Paolini who wrote his first book in
Yeah.
what it was like 16 or 17. So there's that whole gamut. I was going to say, I think you left out engineer, doctor,
Oh yes,
lawyer, engineer.
engineer. No,
Yeah.
yeah. I did. That was a big one too. My grandfather was an engineer, so he would have liked that. Actually, he was really hoping that I would be a doctor. He told me he would buy me a car if I became a doctor, and so that's why I tried chemistry and biology, and then I was like, oh, I'm not getting a car.
So the sciences were hard, but the math was okay.
Yes.
That's too bad that he had to. I mean, at least you had like a what an Indian family would consider something that could be a career and pay your bills.
Yeah.
So, how long did you do that before you started writing for real? I know you probably had little notes everywhere. You probably had, yeah.
Yeah.
So, when did you
So,
start like really putting pencil to paper?
I graduated my undergrad in 2012 and went into it was really terrible job market when I graduated, and I went to a startup in California and actually worked in the marketing department instead of the finance department. And they had me writing their blog, the company blog. And they were like, "You're actually good at like writing." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And that's about the time that I found John Green. And I heard about this thing called National Novel Writing Month. So in November of 2012, I decided to try to write a novel in 30 days. It was like 50,000 words is what the goal was. And I told myself that if I could do that, then it would prove that I could make writing my career, like writing novels my career. And so, yeah, I finished a book in 30 days. It was terrible. I don't have it anymore. I wish I did, but it's like 2 computers ago. Um, but yeah, so after that, I looked into like MFA programs because I wanted to study the craft. I've been reading so many, especially young adults, so many books throughout my life, but I felt like I needed to study it. And maybe that's a little bit of the Asian culture in me is that I was like, I should learn by going to school. And so I did. And I graduated that in 2015. So I was working on just one novel during those MFA years. And then I knew just because I had started plugging into the industry that most authors, career authors, publish a book a year. So from there, I was like, all right, I have to learn how to write a book in 1 year instead of over like 2 years. So yes, in my head, I officially started working towards this publication and this career in like November of 2012.
Hmm. So that was NaNoWriMo, right?
Yeah.
And as an aside, I've heard that NaNoWriMo's kind of imploded.
Yes. Yes. I'm not sure if I should be like mentioning it anymore. That's the truth of how it started. But yes, yeah, it's kind of imploded because it looks like either last year or the year before they were supporting and or like telling people that they should use AI to generate words and chapters and whole books. And most of us writers were like, wait, no, that defeats the purpose of like the challenge of doing something in 30 days if you can just do it in like 5 seconds.
Hmm. Right. It's such a shame too, because I've heard so many people started out with NaNoWriMo because they
Yeah.
created, I don't know about you, but like they created a cohort of people that were writing at the same time. They became friends and critique partners. Is
Yeah.
that your journey as well, or is it different?
I tried on like to meet people online and like the cohorts and stuff, but I was never very good at making friends over the internet. So I did not meet anyone through Nano, but I have met now in hindsight once I've talked to other authors in person. A lot of them have gone through NaNoWriMo. It used to be a thing like I feel like for like at least a decade, it was every writer's yearly challenge and everyone
Mhm.
did it. One of my friends and I would get together every Saturday of November to try to write as many words as possible because I don't know why they chose November, but that's when all the holiday stuff starts. So like it's the worst month to try to do 50,000 words.
I know. I don't know if you could like move it to like April or something and just call it
Yeah.
something else. But that's really interesting. So this is like 2012 and now it's 2025. So
Yes.
what happened in the middle for you?
Yes. Lots of book writing. So I did try to do a book a year. Um, And I mostly was successful at that. I wrote a lot of young adult and then a couple of middle grades, and I started querying. I queried starting in 2015, and I would spend a whole year querying. And if and when the no agent picked it up, I would stop and start querying the next one because while one book was querying with an agent, with agents, I was working on the next one. So there was a lot of rejection in those years, a lot of rejection. So I wrote Her Soul for a Crown was my ninth written book. So I got an agent in January of 2020. So about 4.5 years of querying over, let's see, so this was nine. We've been together since book six. So I queried six books to get an agent, basically.
Wow. Well, you must be really resilient to have gone through that 5 years of that.
Persistence was key. Yeah, I think, there's lots of mantras out there that authors use of like, you only need one yes, it'll happen, when it's meant to happen. My mantra was like, I only fail if I stop. Like the only way I'll never, for sure, never be a novelist is if I stop.
Right,
And I was
right.
like, if I keep going, there's still the chance that it will happen.
So in this time, you were working full time as a financial analyst and writing one book a year
Ooh.
and querying.
So I did not end up actually using my finance degree ever.
Oh, okay.
After I got the degree and I went into marketing and then I went back for my MFA, I went into technical writing. So still office job, still not the creative writing, but I was a technical writer for a couple of years as I
Mhm.
was writing books on the weekends.
Gosh. Um, I just have to, I'm just astounded again that you actually wrote a book a year because I don't know where that happened. There's a lot of writers that don't, but there has been a lot of pressure from publishers
Mhm.
for them to. And, for anybody who reads, I'm a huge fan of the Rebecca Yarros, Fourth Wing series. She actually had to take a break. The pressure was so high and
I
hard.
can't imagine.
Yeah. But you did it yourself. Like you put that pressure on yourself to try to write a book one every year.
Yes. Yes, I did.
So did that sixth book get published? Because it couldn't have, because this is your debut book.
Correct. So that sixth book, it was a young adult historical fantasy that my agent wanted to turn into like an upper middle grade, lower young adult, kind of in the gap years of like the 12 to 14-year olds.
Mhm.
Um, and so I spent a couple months with her revising that. And that's what I kind of call book number seven because it was a complete rewrite. Like I went blank page with it because that was so, at least for me, I felt like a character going from 16, 17 to like 12
Yeah.
was like a huge change character wise. Like there's a lot of growth that happens between those years. So I had to like dial back some things. So yeah, we went on submission with that and another middle grade book the year after that. But that was in 2020 and then in 2021. And things were not great during those years in the world. And it was definitely not great for publishing.
No, no.
So unfortunately, neither of those books found homes. But in the interim, I started writing Her Soul for a Crown in fall of 2020. So that was the third book that we went out on submission for. And that's the one that got picked up.
Hooray!
Yes. Yes.
I do want to go back to the first 7 or 8 books, though. Were you pulling from your own history and culture for those as well?
Most of them, no. So the second book I wrote, in hindsight, I realize now, was a Twilight fan fiction. But instead of vampires and werewolves, it was like angels and demons.
Mm.
So a little bit of Hush Hush, a little bit of Twilight. Um, and yeah, no, the closest one I got was the one that I got my agent with, and that is it's historical fantasy based off of a Bavarian king, so German. So I put in some of my like German heritage, but not as much as what I've put into Her Soul for a Crown.
Mhm.
And I kind of would really love to go back to that story. Now that I've written it as a young adult and a middle grade, I told my agent maybe it's time to try to write it as an adult.
So round 3 for it.
Round three might be coming up, yes, because now,
Okay.
yeah, I would love to add some of that heritage because I do feel so close to both, and it's hard for me to describe describe sometimes unless someone else is also like mixed heritage that you kind of like understand not feeling either one, but feeling both at the same time. It's a weird dichotomy.
Hmm. Right. So like here I'm a person of color. In India, I'm not Indian enough.
Yes. Hmm.
So I totally get you. And for anybody who has a similar experience, feel free to chat about it. Um, so Sahana asks in the chat about what motivated you to move from finance to writing, but did you, I know that you didn't do finance, you went into being a technical writer. Um, are you still on the track to being a writer full time?
Yes, that is still my dream. That is still my goal, my ambition is to be just an author.
Well, I think I'm here for you.
Thank
Um,
you.
all right, so let's get into Her Soul for a Crown. Tell us more about it. Like, I know I'm Indian and you're, Sri Lankan background, but I am going to butcher the names. So I'm going to I'm going to leave that to
Yeah.
you. So I
Okay.
know there is Anula, who's the main
Yeah.
character, and Riki, who is the
Yakka.
yeah,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
god type character.
Mhm.
And the place that they are in is
Yes. Anuradhapura.
Anuradhapura, and that is in Sri Lanka, or is a made up place in Sri Lanka?
It is a real place. It
Okay.
was one of the first kingdoms and like one of the ancient kingdoms that like brought in most of like agriculture and any kinds of advancements that happened like in BC. So yeah, so Anila is a historical figure. Actually, she is the first queen of Sri Lanka. And I had
Mhm.
come across her story in an article where she was compared to Cersei Lannister
Oh,
of Game of Thrones. And I was like, wait a second, why is she compared to Cersei Lannister? It's because Anula is in the history books, is known for poisoning six husbands to get to the throne. And that's all it said about her. And I was like, wait, I need to know more. So I did research on her and on her kingdom and also found out about the demonology
mhm,
at the time that was prevalent in Sri Lanka. This was before Buddhism came over, so before the whole story with Buddha coming and all of that. So that was really fascinating to me too. And that demonology is where I found the Yakas. So Reeri is a Blood Yakka of actual mythology.
mhm,
And his story also just fascinated me. So I came up with a book to put them together, to put them in the same place. And it was so much fun. I actually did get to go to Anuradhapura back in May. And my husband and I went to Sri Lanka. And then, like years ago, when I was a teenager, my mom and I went. So it's a World UNESCO Heritage Site because it is one of the first ancient cities of like the world. And it is also a pilgrimage spot for Buddhists, because now there's a lot of the Buddhist temples, and the monasteries are still almost fully intact, which is so wild.
mhm.
So yeah, that was really fun. I love history and I love mythology and finding when I found out about all of this, I was just like, I want to share this with more people. How can I share it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the perfect vehicle because it's accessible, it's romantasy. So people read it because they love the genre, but then they
Yeah.
learn so much about the culture and the I don't want to say religion because it's more of a was it a religion before Buddhism came in?
Yeah, so I don't know if the term religion really encompasses what demonology was. It was kind of like um the way that we would be like, don't step on a crack, break your mother's back and that kind of stuff. So it was like superstitions of like, don't do this or this yaka will come at you. If you're alone at night in a graveyard, this Yaka is going to do XYZ to you.
Hmm.
But you could also like, but they also had the Katadia, which were like exorcists of the Yakas. So like those were kind of like witch doctors, I guess, if we're trying to get like modern Western terms into it. So yeah, it was fascinating. And
Hmm.
I asked my grandmother because my grandmother and grandfather, they lived in the jungles right outside of Anuradhapura when they were first married. And it was in the 1960s, so not anywhere at the same time as Queen Anula, but she said she still remembered in the 60s that some of the older women would tell her, be wary of so and so Yaka or this curse that you can get, and like they would have
Hmm.
certain rituals that they did outside with like the citrus trees and things to keep Yakas out of their yard, basically.
Which is funny because I know like a lot of Indian relatives will be like, don't do this because you'll get the evil eye. Somebody will,
Evil eye,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. But so Anula was a real person. But in your story, it's obviously fictionalized. But what was her purpose? Like what in killing her, all those husbands?
So that's what was interesting. The history books never really delved into what she did when she ruled. There's very little known other than that she was well liked by the people, but not so much the court. I don't know if that's what they were called, the people that were ruling alongside her. And a lot of theories, even with like scholars now, there was all this talk around her that she was just power hungry and sex crazed because she kept falling in love with different men and then marrying them. And they would like, they started, started going down in caste. Basically, she started with like a royal guy, and then by her sixth husband, I think it was like a palace woodcutter. And so I could see just how that would disturb people,
Hmm.
in power of how dare she choose this man that's nobody, basically. Good that she killed him. I don't know. So that was actually one of the things I wanted to explore in my story was, well, what if she was doing this because they were all bad or
Hmm.
they were possessed or they were like she thought she could do a better job.
Hmm. Yeah, because her ultimate goal, and I'm not giving away any spoilers here, was to become queen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was, I think my understanding is that she wanted to be queen so that she could treat people right.
Yes. And that's very early in the book, like in the first two chapters of hers, I believe is that I wanted to give that goal across to the reader very early on that she had felt and experienced a Raja who did not care about the people. And so her village and her family have suffered for it. And she was like, well, screw that. I will rule and I will make sure the people of this kingdom are treated the way they should be treated.
Mhm. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So, given that Anula was a real person in real life, how did you create her character to fictionalize her and make her believable for the story?
Um, that I had to go through many drafts to like end up with this version of the character. Every time because I think at first I started her like way too mean, like way too much like Cersei Lannister, basically. And I was like, no, 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 no. If this is, it was really about narrowing down or distilling her goal and her why. Once I knew her why, her heart behind it, even if she's doing these probably bad things, what's the heart behind it? Is she doing it for power's sake? Or is she doing it out of a love or a duty, or a belief at least that it's out of love and out of duty? So once I knew her why and her heart, basically, I understood her,
Hmm.
and that's what I wanted to show the reader as well.
Hmm. And why did you make this book a romantasy versus a straight fantasy or even nonfiction?
I've never written nonfiction, so I don't think that even popped into my head that I could do nonfiction. Um, the fantasy, I that is what I'm drawn to. And so I always knew it was going to have a little bit of magic in it. And then, coming across the mythology and all the Yakka stuff, I was like, well, here's the magic. And the romance in it. I don't know. I think for me personally, I find stories more textured when there's romances. And whether that's like a friendship romance or an actual um, sexual romance, there are different types of like relationships that happen in our lives, in our real lives. And I think it's more textualized when a character has those too. So whether you're building a friendship for the first time or you're falling in love for the first time or the 10th time or the seventh time,
Well,
I
I think with Anula, we have to say sixth, right?
yeah, sixth, seventh, eighth, I don't know where she's at. Um, yeah, I love love. Honestly, I love love. And I think that's where it came from was I also like seeing characters who are super ambitious and then like love derails things.
I like
Um,
that part too. I thought that was really cleverly done, where she had a very strong goal. She knew what she wanted, and then boom, Riri rears his head.
yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Love it. So um, let's talk a little bit about the her relationship with Riri, but her relationship with others. How did you create that world? Because that's the one thing, like even on your cover blurb, it says Nisha Tuli, who I really love, was like the world building is amazing and stunning. So how did that happen? Like because it was a sort of a real thing. Sahana asked the same question about if you read if it was before the written word or the written down word, are these carvings in Sri Lanka? Like, how did you find the information about what this world was going to look like?
Oh, yes. Okay, so I did like 6 months of research before I started writing a single word. And I wrote this book over and over for almost 3 years before sending it out to publishers. So when I told you that I wrote a book a year since 2012, I said almost because this was the one that took me longer than 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a lot of research and I tried to find as much as I could online. I reached out to some professors, and when I hit like the internet wall, basically, I started talking to my family members and I asked them what they learned in school about Anula or what they know of the kingdom or of the demonology. Like I just asked tons of questions, and then I just started asking questions about like their life when they were living there. Um, and I got a lot of information. And then that's when I had to start sifting through it to see where the holes were. And that's where I was like, this is a hole, so this is where I'll put fantasy.
Mm.
So yeah, so that was fun, but it did take some time. And then it wasn't until probably like my fourth draft. So my very first draft, I didn't actually finish. I got to like the three-fourths mark, and Anula and Reeri still absolutely hated each other. And they were not even friends. And I was like, this is getting too long. This is all wrong. So I deleted the whole thing without
Oh,
sending it to anyone. My agent never saw it. None of my critique partners saw it. I started completely over, changing their whys, changing their characters a bit. And then I had a full next draft that I then workshopped with one of my critique partners. And then I went back and realized most of it was still wrong. And so I deleted everything after Act One and wrote basically a fourth draft. And that is what's most closely to what's published now. That's what was sent to my agent. Then we did some revisions, and then got the editor and we did some revisions. Nothing as big as those first two where I like tossed thousands of words out. So it was really a finding the holes and then piecing together where I was going to do the the fantasy. But yeah, it was kind of hard because this is like 47 BC. So it was kind of hard to find descriptions of things. So like descriptions of the palace and what Anuradhapura actually physically looked like. So there's the World UNESCO site. And they have some drawings of like this is probably where it was, but we only have like stones or like these like pillars left over from where we think the palace would have been or a stupa was. Um, so that's where my holes were. That's where I had to add the fantasy. So the map that's in the book is definitely all fantasy of like, this is what I imagine it looks like. Because we don't actually have the descriptions of it. So some of it was, yeah, one, it's really old, so we don't have, or I wasn't able to find at the time certain information. And then the other part of it is that Sri Lanka has been colonized multiple times by the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British. I think uh, I think that was it. Maybe the Spanish at one time. So who knows if we did have that information, but then it was, decided that it wasn't important enough to take care of, and we have lost it to time. Um, but yeah, so some of it was hard. And I did get scared at one point that like I was gonna get something wrong because I didn't find the information, but it was out there. And then I had to remind myself like, this is fantasy. You can just be like, I decided to make this part fantasy.
I mean, I was thinking, like, as you were talking, that it was probably very fertile ground for your imagination because there were so many holes
Yeah.
that you could really fill in. So I want to go back to what you just said about how you love, and we were talking about this a little bit before we got started about this is like a sexy romance too. Like it's
Yeah.
not like there is like on the page, yum yum stuff. So how did that like? I'm Indian, repressed. People don't talk about it. And I love that Indian writers are writing romance and bringing it
Hmm.
to the page and bringing it to a wide audience. That people do have sex in India and Southeast Asian countries,
Yes.
and they find love and they find romance and they find connection. So how is that for you? Not only to write, but then to share with everybody that helped you write this book or gave you information to write this book.
Yes. So I feel like I was double repressed because I'm Sri Lankan, but then I was also raised in a very conservative Christian. I lived in the Bible Belt, so
Mm-hmm.
there was no talking of, of sex. I knew very, very little about it going into college, which I don't think was the best idea. But I think it really was. I got my confidence from other authors like Nisha
Mm-hmm.
and all the romance writers that I started reading voraciously in my 20s. And I was like, oh, this is a thing we can talk about because it happens. And honestly, all I knew about sex, unfortunately, in those early college years was what I had read in books or seen on TV,
Mm-hmm.
which some of that stuff is not true. So yeah, writing it, finding myself writing it came very naturally because for writers, I think when you read a lot and you enjoy certain types of story, you just like start naturally wanting to explore them yourself in writing. And I also watch a lot of anime, especially like the shoujo, so like that was slice of life, the first loves. I love a first love. Um, so I was enjoying writing it. And it wasn't until this book sold to my publisher in 2024 that I was like, oh my God, my family is going to read this. And then that's when I was like, maybe I just ask them to like support me by buying the book, but like they don't have to read it. So I'm still waiting to hear from them. I think at this point, my family is just like we can read it, we'll just never talk about it. We're very good at just not talking about things. Everyone in the room knows that we're not talking about it. But
So
thankfully
funny.
none of them have like come out and like been against it. I am very lucky in that aspect, and I feel very grateful that my family has always been, so far, I guess, since they haven't read it yet, they have been encouraging of my dream and encouraging of my writing, even though they don't know what I'm actually writing.
And
And
I
it's
do
funny because in book two, I like went harder on romance. Like the not book two, but like the next book I'm currently working on. And I'm like, my God, nobody in my family is allowed to read this.
Oh, and I do want to say for the people that are still here that that I'm throwing out these like sort of broad stereotype things about Southeast Asia and being
Yeah.
Indian, things like that. It's very broad. Every person and family is individual. But my experience of my own family has been that, and I know that we talked about it a little bit before we started. So I definitely want to make that little disclaimer that these are very broad stereotypes.
Yeah.
Um, so so what was your favorite part of writing this book, though? Was it the world building, the characters, the plot, the settings, the demonology? What was the number one thing that you enjoyed?
The number one. Okay, so because I went through so many drafts and there were so many layers to add in with all the drafts and revisions, and the thing that kept me excited, like the kernel, the seed, was putting in these specific things that I love, even if it was like hand wavy on time period. Like the saris. I describe a lot of saris that Anula wears and her jewelry. And no, those were probably not the exact styles of jewelry or styles of sari that she would have worn in 47 BC. It's way more modern because those are the ones that I'm wearing. And I just absolutely love them so much. So every time I could put in a detail, or every time I read through the draft and I got to the details, that like made me really excited. And I did the same with food. If you see food in this book, which you do, those are my favorite foods. Those are the ones that I want my aunties to make because, like, yes, I've learned to make them recently, and so they're edible. But my aunties make them so much better. My grandmother's beef curry is my husband's absolute favorite. But yeah, so any foods, any saris or jewelries that I put in the book are the details that like kept me alive with every single draft was that I wanted to put the pieces of my heart into a book to hopefully like spark some sort of either interest from a reader or like if they also love jewelry, maybe it opens their world to like Sri Lankan jewelry or Indian jewelry because they're kind of similar
Mhm.
in some things. And now with the internet, like you can buy all those types of jewelries anywhere at any time. But yeah, and those were the things that I grew up being told about is the Sri Lanka is known for their sapphires. And it's called the Ceylon sapphire because during British rule, it was called Ceylon, not Sri Lanka. And actually, most of the British royal jewels are made from with Sri Lankan sapphires. And like the Princess Diana ring, that's a Sri Lankan
Oh.
Ceylon sapphire. Yeah, so like Anula has a necklace, a two-tier banded necklace of sapphires. And so
Mhm.
that was my like nod to like the Sri Lankan sapphires and just I remember opening my mom and grandmother's like jewelry boxes when I was little to like put on their gold earrings and the bangles that went up my arms and the sapphires. And of course there were some things that they were like, no, 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 don't touch that. Don't touch that until you were much older.
I've also had that discussion with family members. Um, so I want to go back to publishing a little bit. I want to remind everybody that we have about 15 more minutes. If you have any questions at all, please put them either in the Q&A or the chat. I'm definitely paying attention. I have plenty more questions, so I'm happy to keep going. Um, but to go to back to publishing, um, is did you feel like because you were able to put so much of yourself into this book and your own history and your own culture, or at least half of it, that this was a moment that this book could be published because the the desire for publishers to find more diverse stories.
So that did come to my mind almost as a double-edged sword because so this was an idea I'd had when my agent and I had the call back in January of 2020. I was like, so I came across this article of this historical person, and I think I would like to research and see if I could do a book. And she was like, yes, go for it. And as I was researching and starting the first draft, I started getting really scared because I was like, I don't feel enough. I don't feel like Sri Lankan enough. I haven't lived there. I wasn't born there. Yes, my family was and is and all of that, but I started feeling very scared that like the world would not be happy that I wrote a story or even that like I liked I got scared that like people would be mad that I was in love with saris and curries and I put it in a book. And so I
Mhm.
think that obviously was just a lot of fear. So there were multiple conversations with my agent where I was like, I don't know if I should go out with this. Like, I don't want to get canceled. I don't want death threats.
Mm.
Um, so that was the fear was there, but also the hope was there because I was seeing more and more non-Western culture books. So like I was hopeful, but also very scared.
It's a bit of a scary time, I think, um, for a lot of diversity. But Sahana asks another question about cinnamon. Since Sri Lanka is known for cinnamon, was that any part of the story?
So there's a little bit of cinnamon. I didn't get very much of it in there, so there's sprinkles of it, but I would like to add it more to I have another book idea that I might be working on later this year or next year, where cinnamon would play a bigger part. But yes, Ceylon cinnamon. It has a completely different taste than the Saigon cinnamon, which is like what we're really used to here in the States of like the dark colored cinnamon. Ceylon cinnamon is a little bit lighter and it has a different flavor to it. It's harder to find, but you can find it. And I did bring some back from in May. I was like, that is like the thing I want. Um, so yes, I have some in there. Reeri does use it. He uses cinnamon bark to like stir his tea.
Well, let's talk about Riri for a minute because he's like a demon, like he's
Yeah.
mythical, mythological, and and yet he has these such human feelings. Like, how is that for you to write a male character who who should be like, but is actually very down to earth, I'll say.
Yes. So I have this, I don't know why this is. One of my critique partners like brought it up, I think last year, that I tend to write my male characters way more easily than my female characters. And I don't know why that is. I don't think I read a bunch of books that are just male characters or male point of view, so I have no idea what that is. But that was what I kind of liked to explore because in the demonology, almost kind of like Anula, there wasn't much about the whys behind the yakas. It was just that they were like these insatiable demons that want to spread disease and eat you and I don't know, drink goblets full of your blood. And I was like, but why? And like are do they there's thousands of these yakas, which is kind of like a family or like a clan. Do they have interpersonal relations? Like, do they have connections to each other, or are they like feelingless? And I thought that was boring, so I made them have lots of feelings. And so that was really interesting. And in the mythology, as in I put in the book, these yakas are kind of ruled by a lord named Wesemony, and he would get mad at them for like basically doing the thing they were created to do. I guess they were doing it too much, too often. He didn't like, I don't know, that they were so good at it, but he would like punish them in very terrible ways. He was very toxic and abusive. And so I put that in the book and I was like, well, what if one of the Yakkas cared that all these other Yakkas were being abused by the person in charge of them or the being in charge of them, and like what would happen after that. So I explored that with the Reeri story. Again, just like kind of, I guess I kind of like finding the holes in history of like what's not talked about. And then I'm like, well, what if?
Mhm. Which makes the best stories, right? But it sounds so similar to the gods of Olympus.
Yeah.
Was there did you find any research on any kind of connection between the stories or anything like that?
I did not. I did try to find I but again, I probably just wasn't looking in the right place, or like the internet is vast but also kind of hard to sift through,
Hmm.
especially for Sri Lankan things. It's getting better, but for a while there, I felt it felt very difficult to find anything outside of like Buddhism or Hinduism, as in religions for Sri Lanka. And I was like, you guys, Sri Lanka's been around for thousands and thousands of years. There has to have been something pre-religion in the way that we think of it. The way that I think of like Greek gods, I think that's like pre-religion, the mythologies and stuff like that. But yeah, I did not find any correlations, but I wonder there's probably a book out there that does talk about correlations. There's got to be someone out there smarter than me that has made connections with all these other mythologies of the world, because I know there's so much overlap, especially in the European mythologies. Even though they're different gods' names and like places, they actually overlap quite a bit. I've heard the same can be told for. I think I was hearing that there was like overlap between some of the either Greek or Roman mythology and Christianity myth as well, or like early day Christianity myth, not the current Bible that we read,
Hmm.
which I think
Yeah,
is fascinating.
absolutely. Because I mean, we think the world was so separate back then, but
Mhm.
actually there was interconnection in
Yeah.
different ways. But so we just have a few more minutes, and I wanted to ask you what books or writers influenced you or continue to influence you or inspire you.
Yeah, so I always say Sarah Dessen was first. She was the one that made me want to be a writer.
Hmm.
And then um no, John Green, because he made me realize that could be my job.
Hmm.
And then just as like actual writing, Maggie Stiefvater, she's when I was writing YA, she was like the top tier, the cream of the crop to like write like. Now in the fantasy genre is V.E. Schwab. Everything she's doing, even her literary work with her new book, very my bones in the midnight soil, I think it is. Bury my bone. Uh, Jay Kristoff, I love. He's like more grimdark fantasy, but he does a great job of world building and setting you in. There's one series that's like almost Italy, and one series that's like across the whole countryside of France, and it's beautiful. And he has great twists. But then in romantasy. Um, Scarlett St. Clair, her A Touch of Darkness series was actually the series that gave me the confidence to put the yearning and the romance and the scenes, the spicy scenes in her Sulphur Crown. Otherwise, it would have just been fantasy with like, I guess, a romance of plot, but you wouldn't have seen much of it. Um, but yeah.
Wow, I love Scarlett St. Clair. And
Yeah.
she's also she's got a Native American heritage.
She
So
does,
she
yeah.
yeah, so she does pull in a lot of that her own background and interests into her books as well, that mythology, which I think is fantastic.
Yes, me too.
And so you mentioned another book in this series, possibly. I know this book just came out, everybody, just came out, but you are working on the next.
Yes. So I was so blessed when Source Books, my publisher, picked up my debut, Her Sulphur Crown. They actually picked up Her Soul for a Crown plus a second untitled book. And so, yeah, I have a sophomore novel coming up in the next year or two. We don't have any dates yet. Nothing's been like announced. But yes, I'm working on a sophomore novel. It is going to be, or it is, because I'm working on it. It is in the same universe, like the same world as Her Soul for a Crown, but different characters. So different. I found a different historical queen that I wanted to explore her story, and one of the side character Yakkas is now going to be main character Yakka.
So, are you still shooting for that one book a year goal? Because you said a year or two.
Yes, I was, and I don't know if I'm still gonna hit it, because I needed originally, yes, it was gonna come out next 2026, next fall, but I had to ask for more time recently to get another draft in. It's been different writing on deadline versus like writing with critique partners. Oh, what at my own leisure. So yeah, I needed a little bit more time, and I'm glad that I asked for it because it'll be a much better book. But
Mhm.
because I did that, I don't know if I like changed the schedule like a lot because publishers have so many books coming out. They really have like to break down like week by week who's getting published, and we don't want any overlaps and um I mean, I don't want to be up against a Katie Robert release day. So,
I think you should worry more about like Stephen King or somebody.
or that,
That's great.
yeah.
One last question from the audience. Was language a barrier in your research? Do you speak Sri Lankan?
Mm.
Do you understand it? Do you read it? And were you able to find text in English?
So yeah, no, I do not speak it, and so I definitely can't read it. I tried my grandfather, but I think he was more of like, I don't want to do this. So he pretended to forget. And I was like, I know you didn't forget how to read in your native language. But yes, I did actually find quite a few books in English. I don't know if that was if they were translated. There were, but because, yeah, a lot of books I found on JSTOR. So I think they
Mhm.
were written by historians or some sort of professor or student um, a- in English. So I was very lucky to find those. Yeah.
Mhm. So JSTOR is a database for academia. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make sure people live it. So, um, well, thank you so much for doing this. This has been so much fun. I've learned so much about you and Sri Lanka and your writing. I just really appreciate all of your honesty about all of this, and the book is wonderful. I think everybody should run out and read it.
Aw, thank you so much. Thank you
Well,
everyone for coming.
yeah, thanks everybody for being here and for your questions, and happy reading. I will hopefully see you all again soon. Thank you, Alysha.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.